I got home that evening later than usual. The office had been chaos, deadlines piling up, and honestly, I was exhausted. All I wanted was to crash on the couch, maybe crack open a beer, and catch the game. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed something off right away. The garage light was on. Strange, I always turned it off before leaving. Emily wasn't supposed to be home yet. As I got out of the car, I heard it. Laughter. Muffled, low, and coming from inside my garage. For a second, I froze. My brain scrambled to make sense of it. Maybe she had a friend over? But no, Emily didn't just hang out in the garage. The sound wasn't hers anyway. It was deeper. A man's laugh. I stepped closer, my heart thudding in my chest. The garage door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to peek through without being seen. And that's when I saw them. Emily standing way too close to some guy I didn't recognize. He was leaning casually against the workbench, like he owned the place, twirling a set of my car keys in his hand. She was smiling up at him, that same damn smile she used to give me. The kind that could make you feel like the only person in the world. The air felt electric, charged with something unspoken. The way she touched his arm, the way he leaned in, it wasn't innocent. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to storm in right then and there. But I needed to know more. I needed to hear what they were saying. "Your husband never comes in here?" the guy asked, tossing the keys back onto the bench. Emily shook her head with a little laugh. "Nope, he's clueless. Always too busy with work." Clueless? Is that what she thought of me? The guy smirked. Lucky for us. My mind went blank. The blood roared in my ears, drowning out the rest of their conversation. Lucky? I backed away from the garage, breathing hard. My hands were trembling, not from fear, from rage. Every second I stood there, listening to their private little world, something inside me cracked. I couldn't take it anymore. I shoved the door open, hard enough to make it slam against the wall. They both jumped, turning to face me like deer caught in headlights. "Clueless, huh?" I said, my voice cold and steady. I wasn't yelling, not yet. I was too furious for that. Emily's eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't figure out what to say. The guy? He straightened up, trying to play it cool. "Big mistake. You must be the husband," he said, offering me a cocky little nod. "Nice to meet you." I took 2 steps toward him and he backed up fast, hitting the workbench. Good. He should be scared. "Get out." My voice was low, but there was no mistaking the threat behind it. "Now." The guy glanced at Emily, like he was waiting for her to say something, but she just stood there, frozen. I took another step. I said, "Get the hell out of my house." He didn't need to be told again. Grabbing his jacket, he made a quick exit through the side door without another word. That left just the 2 of us. Me and Emily. Silence hung heavy between us. She crossed her arms, defensive. "It's not what you think." I laughed. A bitter, sharp laugh that tasted like betrayal. "Really?" Because it looked exactly like what I think. Her face twisted, like she couldn't decide whether to play the victim or the aggressor. She settled on anger. "You shouldn't be spying on me." I stared at her in disbelief. "Spying? You're standing in my garage with some guy while I'm at work, and you think I'm the problem." Her lips pressed into a thin line. It wasn't serious." "Oh, that makes it better?" I stepped closer, forcing her to meet my eyes. "Who is he?" Her silence spoke volumes. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't the first time that I stood there, staring at Emily, waiting for her to say something that made sense. But all I got was silence. Her eyes darted around the garage like she was looking for an escape route. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even ashamed. She was calculating. And that's when it hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't the first time. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "How long?" Emily's arms tightened across her chest. "It's not. Don't lie to me." My voice came out sharper than I expected, cutting through the stale air between us. "How long has this been going on?" She let out a frustrated sigh, like I was the one inconveniencing her. "It's not what you think. He's just a friend." "A friend?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Do all your friends hang out in my garage, touching your arm and calling me clueless?" She had the audacity to roll her eyes. You're blowing this out of proportion. Blowing it out of proportion? I felt my fists clench at my sides. I was trying so hard to keep my cool, but the way she stood there, like I was some annoying interruption in her day, made my blood boil. You think I'm stupid, don't you? I asked, my voice low and steady. She didn't answer. That silence said more than any excuse she could have thrown at me. You've done this before, I said, piecing it together in real time. The late nights, the sudden girls' trips, the unexplained texts from unknown numbers. Haven't you? Her lips pressed into a thin line. She was quiet for a beat too long. And that's when I saw it, the tiniest flicker in her expression. Guilt. That's all I needed. Who else? I demanded. What? She shot back, her voice rising, defensive. I stepped closer, refusing to let her squirm her way out of this. I'm not asking if there were others. I'm asking who. She scoffed, brushing past me like I wasn't even there. Oh, give me a break. You're paranoid. You've always been paranoid. I grabbed her arm. Not hard, just enough to stop her from walking away. Her eyes flared with anger. Don't touch me. Don't touch you, I repeated, incredulous. After what I just saw, you want to set boundaries with me? She yanked her arm free. I'm not doing this with you right now. But I wasn't done. Do you even care, Emily? Do you even feel bad? She spun around, finally snapping. Feel bad? For what? For finding a little happiness outside of this boring, dead marriage. That hit me harder than a slap to the face. Dead marriage? That's how she saw it? I stood there, stunned, while she grabbed her keys off the workbench. I don't have time for this, she muttered. I have plans tonight. Plans? I echoed, my voice cold. With him. She didn't even flinch. I'm going out. Don't wait up. And just like that, she walked out. No apology. No explanation. Nothing. I heard the car start in the driveway, the sound of the engine fading into the distance. I stood there in the garage, surrounded by my tools, my workbench, the pieces of my life, and all I could think was, what the hell just happened? It wasn't shock anymore. It was fury. Cold, calculated rage. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not this time. Emily wanted to play games? Fine. She was about to learn exactly what it felt like to lose. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, half expecting Emily to call or text. Maybe some half-assed apology, maybe a let's talk. But nothing. Just silence. The hours crawled by, and the more time passed, the clearer my thoughts became. She wasn't coming home to explain herself. She wasn't sorry. And that's when I made a decision. If she wasn't going to tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. By morning, I had a plan. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for more lies. I wasn't going to cry, beg, or plead for answers. I was going to get them, and I was going to make her regret ever thinking I wouldn't. The first step? Her phone. Emily had a habit of leaving her old phones in a drawer in the study. She never wiped them, too lazy or too careless, I don't know. Either way, I was counting on her carelessness to work in my favor. Sure enough, I found her last phone shoved in the back of a drawer. Dead. I charged it, pacing the room like a man possessed. When it finally powered on, my heart raced as I unlocked it with her old passcode. She hadn't even changed it. Pathetic. The messages loaded, and there it was, a string of texts that made my stomach turn. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. Is he home tonight? I could come by after. It wasn't just one guy. There were 3. Different names. Different numbers. All with the same sickening pattern. She'd been sneaking around for months. Maybe longer. I scrolled through photos, my hands shaking. There they were. Selfies she sent to these men, dressed up in outfits I'd never seen. Laughing, posing, living a life I had no part in. And the worst part? She looked happy. That's when something inside me shifted. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was done. I took screenshots of everything. Every text, every photo, every little bit of evidence. I wasn't going to confront her empty-handed again. No, this time, I'd hit her with the cold, undeniable truth. I heard her car pull into the driveway around noon. She waltzed in like nothing had happened. No guilt, no shame. Just the same arrogant smirk she'd worn the night before. Morning, she said casually, tossing her purse on the counter. You're up early. I stared at her for a long moment, the silence stretching between us like a loaded gun. Finally, I spoke. You had fun last night? She raised an eyebrow, playing innocent. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. I just slid my phone across the table toward her. Her eyes flicked to the screen. The screenshots. Her smirk faltered. What is this? What do you think it is? I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Go ahead. Read it. She swiped through the photos, her expression darkening with every passing second. Where did you get this? She demanded. That doesn't matter. I stood up slowly, towering over her. What matters is that you've been lying to me for God knows how long, sneaking around with these guys, laughing behind my back. Her mouth opened, but I wasn't done. You told them I was clueless, I said, my voice cold, that I'd never figure it out. Well, guess what, Emily? I'm not clueless. I know everything. For the first time, she looked nervous. She bit her lip, eyes darting around the room like she was searching for a way out. I can explain, she started, but I cut her off. Don't bother. I'm done listening to your lies. She took a step toward me, her tone shifting to sweet and apologetic. Fake. It didn't mean anything. Okay? It was just a distraction. I've been feeling lonely, and lonely? I laughed bitterly. That's your excuse? You were lonely? She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. We've been distant, you know? You're always working, and I needed something. You needed something? I repeated, stepping closer. And instead of talking to me, you decided to spread your legs for 3 other men? Her face twisted with anger. The tears vanished as quickly as they came. Don't you dare talk to me like that. I'll talk to you however I damn well please. I shot back. I'm your husband. Or did you forget that part? For a moment, we stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Then she laughed. Cold. Cruel. Fine, she said, crossing her arms. You caught me. So what? What are you going to do about it? That's when I knew. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She was daring me to act. And I wasn't about to disappoint her. You'll find out soon enough, I said, grabbing my keys. Karma has a funny way of catching up to people like you. She blinked, confused. Where are you going? I smirked, heading for the door. To make sure you get exactly what you deserve. I didn't leave the house to clear my head. No, I left with a plan. Emily thought she had me cornered. Thought I'd crumble under the weight of her betrayal, cry in some pathetic heap on the floor, and beg her to stay. But she underestimated me. Big mistake. I wasn't interested in saving our marriage. I was interested in burning down her perfect little world. I drove straight to a cafe downtown, a place she never went. I needed privacy to make a few calls. The first was to Megan, Emily's best friend. Megan picked up after 2 rings, sounding chipper. Hey, Matt. What's up? I wasted no time. Do you know what your best friend has been up to behind my back? There was a pause. What are you talking about? Emily. I caught her sneaking around with some guy last night. And judging by the messages I found, it wasn't just one. Another long silence. Then Megan let out a sigh. Matt, I had a feeling something was off, but I didn't want to get involved. Really? So you knew? No, not exactly. But she's been weird lately, canceling plans, making excuses. I thought maybe it was just stress. I leaned back in my chair, my grip tightening on the phone. You've known her for years, Megan. Does this sound like something new? Or has she always been like this? She hesitated. Honestly, I think she's been doing this for a while. She always talked about how you were too busy and how she deserved more. Deserved more? I clenched my jaw. You know what? I said, my voice calm but cold. Thanks for your honesty, but you might want to distance yourself from her. Things are about to get messy. The next call was to Greg, one of Emily's coworkers. Greg was a good guy, the kind who liked to keep things professional. We weren't close, but we'd crossed paths at a few work events. I had a feeling he'd know something. Matt, he answered, surprised. Didn't expect to hear from you. Everything okay? Not really, I said bluntly. I need to ask you something. Off the record. Okay? Is Emily involved with someone from work? There was a long pause, followed by a heavy sigh. Look, I don't want to get in the middle of this. You're not in the middle of anything, I said. I already know she's been cheating. I just need to know if it's someone from the office. Greg muttered a curse under his breath. Yeah, there's been talk. Nothing concrete, but people have noticed her getting close with a client. A client? Yeah, some guy named Brad. He's been around a lot lately. Brad. One of the guys from her texts. That was all I needed to hear. By the time I got home, I was armed with information. Names, places, timelines. And Emily? She was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. She didn't even glance up when I walked in. Have a nice drive? She asked, her tone casual. I stood in front of her, blocking her view of the TV. We need to talk, she sighed, setting her phone down. Seriously? We're still doing this? Yeah, we are. I tossed a stack of printed screenshots onto the coffee table. Texts, photos, everything. Her eyes widened as she flipped through them. Where did you get these? Does it matter? I leaned in, my voice cold. I know about Brad. I know about the others. I know about everything. She blinked, her confidence wavering for the first time. You've been digging into my life? No, Emily. I've been digging into the life you've been hiding from me. She bit her lip, looking genuinely nervous. But then, like clockwork, she switched tactics. The tears came, her voice trembling. I made mistakes, okay? I was lonely. You were never home, Matt. I felt invisible. Cut the act, I snapped. You weren't lonely. You were bored. And instead of talking to me, you decided to turn our marriage into a joke. She tried to stand, but I stepped in closer, towering over her. Sit down. She sank back into the couch, crossing her arms like a pouting child. What do you want from me? She asked. I smirked. Finally, the right question. What do I want? I echoed. I want you to lose everything you thought you could keep hidden. I want the people you've lied to, your friends, your family, your coworkers, to see exactly who you are. Her eyes narrowed. You wouldn't. I leaned in close, locking eyes with her. Try me. Her bravado cracked. For the first time, she looked afraid. Please, she whispered. Don't do this. We can fix it. I'll stop. I swear. But it was too late for promises. The unfaithful wife got what she deserved. Karma did its job. The husband's sweet revenge had just begun. Emily sat there, frozen, her usual arrogance wiped from her face. For once, she looked exactly how I wanted her to look. Powerless. I paced the room slowly, letting the tension build. She was waiting for me to snap, to yell, to crumble under the weight of everything I'd uncovered. But I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. No, I was going to take my time with this. You don't get it yet, do you? I said, stopping in front of her. This isn't just about what you did. It's about who you are. The lies, the deceit, the fact that you've been living a double life while I've been working my ass off to build a future for us. Emily swallowed hard. I never wanted to hurt you. T. I leaned in, my voice low and cutting. You didn't care if you hurt me. You only cared about getting away with it. She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't finished. I've been your safety net, Emily. Your meal ticket. While you've been out playing around with Brad and God knows who else, I've been paying the bills, keeping the house running, making sure you had everything you needed. And what did I get in return? Lies. Her face twisted in anger. You think you're some kind of saint? You're not. You've been distant for months, Matt. You've barely even touched me. What did you expect me to do? Just sit around and wait for you to notice me? I laughed. A harsh, bitter sound. Oh, I noticed you, Emily. I noticed when you stopped coming to bed at the same time as me. I noticed when you suddenly needed space and started hiding your phone like a teenager. I noticed when you started dressing up to go to places you never cared about before. Her eyes flickered with something between guilt and annoyance. She knew I was right, but she wasn't going to admit it. Not yet. You've been checking out of this marriage for a long time, she said, crossing her arms. Maybe if you hadn't been so busy, things would have been different. Stop blaming me, I snapped. This isn't about what I did or didn't do. This is about you. You made these choices. You decided to cheat. You lied to my face, over and over. For a moment, the room went silent. Then, she smirked. That cruel little smirk that made my blood boil. So, what now? She asked. You've got your evidence. You've made your point. What are you going to do? Leave me? Go ahead. See if I care. I smiled. She thought this was about walking away? No, Emily. I'm not just leaving. I'm taking everything with me. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, real fear crept into her expression. What do you mean? I've already spoken to a lawyer, I said calmly. Your name's not on the house. You have no claim to my savings. And once I file for divorce on the grounds of infidelity, with all this evidence, you'll walk away with nothing. She blinked, stunned. You wouldn't? I would, I said, my voice hard. And I will. She jumped to her feet, panic rising. Matt, please, let's talk about this. We don't have to do it this way. Why? Because it's not on your terms. I stepped closer, towering over her. Because you don't get to control the narrative anymore? Her hands shook as she reached out, grabbing my arm. I made mistakes. I'm sorry. I'll fix it, I swear. I yanked my arm away. You're only sorry because you got caught. She sank back onto the couch, her face pale. For the first time, she realized the game was over. But I wasn't done. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out my phone. Remember Brad? Her eyes darted to the phone. What about him? I scrolled to the contact list and hit call. The line rang once, twice. Then a familiar voice answered. Brad speaking. Hey, Brad, I said, my voice calm and casual. It's Matt, Emily's husband. There was a long, stunned silence on the other end. Matt? Yeah, just thought you should know, Emily won't be available tonight. Or ever again. Brad stammered, but I didn't give him a chance to respond. I hung up and turned back to Emily. Her face was a mix of shock and fury. You called him? Oh, I'm just getting started, I said with a smirk. I wonder how your little circle of friends will react when they see the real you. All those photos, all those texts. You've got a lot of explaining to do. She stood up, shaking with rage. You're destroying my life. No, I said, stepping closer. You destroyed it the moment you betrayed me. I'm just making sure everyone sees the aftermath. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. You're a bastard. I smiled. And you're about to find out what happens when you cross one. The fall had begun, and I wasn't stopping until she hit rock bottom. Emily stood there, trembling. Her whole persona, the smug, untouchable woman who thought she had control of everything, was crumbling right in front of me. Her lips quivered as she tried to piece together some excuse, some manipulative way to turn this around. But I saw through her. I'd always known Emily was good at playing the victim when it suited her. But now, she had no cards left to play. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through my contacts. What are you doing now? She demanded, her voice cracking with panic. I didn't answer. I just kept scrolling. Finally, I landed on the name I wanted, her mother. Emily's face drained of color. No, don't. Matt, please. I hit the call button. Matt! She lunged toward me. But I stepped back, keeping the phone just out of her reach. You don't need to involve my family. This is between us. I raised an eyebrow. Between us? You mean the same way it was between us when you were sneaking around with Brad? Or should I call the other guys too? Let them know the game's over. She shook her head frantically. Please. My mom doesn't need to know. Oh, she does, I said coldly. She needs to know exactly what kind of daughter she raised. The phone rang twice before her mother picked up. Matt? Her voice came through warm and familiar. She always liked me more than Emily's exes. Hi, Janet, I said, my tone calm. I'm sorry to bother you, but I thought you should hear this from me before it hits the rest of the family. There was a pause. What's going on? I glanced at Emily, who was staring at me like she'd just seen a ghost. Good. She should be afraid. I just found out Emily's been having multiple affairs. It's been going on for a while, and I've got all the proof I need. Her mother gasped. Emily? Is this true? Emily grabbed my arm, shaking her head wildly. Mom, it's not like that. He's exaggerating. He's just angry. I pulled my arm free, keeping my voice steady. I'm not exaggerating, Janet. I've got texts, photos, names. Janet's voice trembled with disbelief. I can't believe this. Emily, how could you? Emily sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. Finally, the mask had shattered. She'll be hearing from my lawyer soon, I added. I'm filing for divorce. Janet's tone shifted to apologetic. Matt, I don't know what to say. You've been nothing but good to her. Yeah, I said bitterly. I was. Emily suddenly snapped her head up, eyes blazing with fury. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She spat. Dragging me through the mud in front of everyone? I shrugged. I'm just making sure you get what you deserve. Her mother, still on the line, whispered, I'll talk to her, Matt. And I'm so sorry. I hung up, tossing my phone onto the coffee table. Emily glared at me, tears streaming down her face. But there was no remorse in her eyes, just anger. You think you're so righteous, she hissed. But you're just as cruel as I am. I leaned in close, meeting her gaze. There's a difference between us, Emily. I don't destroy people who love me. You do. She flinched, the truth hitting her like a slap. And now, I continued, I'm making sure everyone sees who you really are. Emily stood, shaking with rage. You can't ruin me. I smiled. Watch me. Later that day, I sent the screenshots to a few key people. Her close friends, her coworkers, even Brad's wife. I wasn't interested in making a spectacle of it. I just wanted the truth out in the open. I didn't add any commentary. No dramatic messages. Just the screenshots. Let the facts speak for themselves. By the evening, my phone was blowing up with texts and missed calls. Megan, Matt, I don't know what to say. I had no idea it was this bad. Greg, holy SHT. People at the office are talking. Brad's in serious trouble. Asterisk unknown number. Likely Brad's wife. Thank you for telling me. He's packing his things as we speak. Emily? She locked herself in the bedroom. For hours, she stayed hidden. No apologies. No explanations. Just silence. Good. Let her sit with it. Let her feel what it's like to lose control. When she finally emerged, her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen. She looked at me with a mixture of hate and desperation. What do you want from me? She whispered. I crossed my arms, staring her down. I already told you. I want you to lose. She bit her lip, trembling. You can't just throw me away like this. Funny, I said. You threw me away a long time ago. That night, as I sat on the couch, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The weight was gone. For too long, I'd been carrying this relationship on my back, ignoring the red flags, making excuses for her behavior. But now I was free. Emily thought she could lie, cheat, and manipulate her way through life. She thought I was clueless. She was wrong, and karma was finally catching up to her. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. Emily's world was falling apart faster than even I had planned. The messages kept flooding in, not for me, but for her. Friends, family, coworkers, even people who hadn't spoken to her in years suddenly had an opinion. Everyone knew. I stood by the kitchen window, sipping my coffee as Emily paced the living room, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her hair was a mess, her makeup smudged from the tears she'd cried through the night. She looked nothing like the polished woman who used to hold her head so high. Stop calling me. She snapped into the phone, her voice cracking with frustration. It's none of your business. She hung up, only for it to buzz again seconds later. Do you want to get that? I asked, my tone casual. She shot me a glare. What the hell did you do, Matt? I raised an eyebrow. I told the truth. That's all. She paced faster, muttering to herself. You had no right. None of them needed to know. This is between us. It was never just between us. I set my coffee down and leaned against the counter. You dragged other people into this the moment you started sneaking around. Brad, the others, even your friends. Now, everyone knows the real you. Her phone buzzed again, and this time, she threw it onto the couch in frustration. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? I'm pretty clear on it, yeah? She stormed over, pointing a trembling finger at me. You've ruined my life. No, Emily, I said calmly. You ruined your life. I just took off the mask. The fallout was relentless. By mid-afternoon, Emily's mother had shown up at the house, red-faced and furious. She barely glanced at me before marching straight up to Emily. What have you done? Janet's voice was filled with disappointment. I just got off the phone with your aunt. She saw the messages. Emily groaned, burying her face in her hands. Mom, please. No, Janet cut her off. I don't want to hear excuses. Matt has been nothing but good to you. And you? You throw it all away for what? A fling? Are you that selfish? Emily's shoulders shook as she sobbed, but her mother wasn't having it. You're lucky your father isn't here to see this. He'd be ashamed of you. I stayed silent, watching the scene unfold. I wasn't here to comfort her. I was here to watch her unravel. When Janet finally turned to leave, she paused by the door and gave me a long, sad look. I'm sorry, Matt. You didn't deserve this. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. After her mother left, Emily sat on the floor, staring blankly at the wall. Her phone buzzed every few minutes, but she didn't move to pick it up. Finally, she broke the silence. Why? Her voice was hollow. Why what? Why did you have to destroy me? I tilted my head, studying her. You destroyed yourself, Emily. I just let the truth out. She shook her head slowly. You could have just left, walked away, but you chose to humiliate me. I knelt down, meeting her eyes. Do you have any idea how it felt to watch you lie to my face? To see you laughing with another man in my house? To read those messages and realize you've been doing this for months? Maybe years. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. I didn't think you'd ever find out. I laughed, a bitter sound. That's your regret? That you got caught? Silence. That's what I thought, I said, standing up. Later that night, I got a text from someone unexpected. Brad's wife. Unknown number. Thank you for telling me. I had no idea. He's gone now. I stared at the message for a long moment. Brad's life was crumbling too. Good. He wasn't getting off easy either. Emily walked into the room, looking like a shadow of the woman she used to be. Her voice was soft, almost pleading. What happens now? I looked at her for a long time before answering. What happens now? I repeated. Now you live with the consequences. Her eyes welled up again. I'm sorry, but it wasn't enough. I don't want your apology, I said. I want you to remember this moment. Every time you think about lying to someone, every time you think about betraying someone who loves you, I want you to remember this. She collapsed onto the couch, her sobs echoing through the empty house. And for the first time in months, I felt free. Karma had done its job. And Emily? She got exactly what she deserved. The house was quiet, except for Emily's muffled sobs. Her world had fallen apart, and all that was left was the wreckage of what we once were. I stood there, watching her crumble, and I felt nothing. No pity, no regret, no sadness, just relief. This was the end of our story, and it was exactly how it needed to end. The next morning, I started packing. I wasn't going to stay in that house, not after what she'd done. She could keep the empty shell of what was left. I wanted no part of it. Emily came downstairs, her eyes swollen, her hair a mess. She watched me pack in silence, her expression blank. Finally, she spoke. You're really leaving? I didn't look at her. I'm done, Emily. She walked over, standing a few feet away from me. Can't we at least talk? I zipped up the suitcase and turned to face her. Talk? About what? How you lied to me. How you dragged my name through the mud while you snuck around with other men. What's left to say? She bit her lip, tears welling up again. I was stupid. I made mistakes. But we've been together for so long, Matt. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I shook my head slowly. It did. But you threw it away. Her voice cracked. People make mistakes. A mistake is one time, Emily. I took a step toward her, my voice steady. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Over and over again. You didn't just betray me, you planned it. You covered it up. You laughed behind my back. You broke every promise we ever made. She wiped at her face, trembling. I don't know how to fix this. You can't. Before I left, I sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where we used to share coffee, talk about our plans, and dream about the future. I looked at her one last time, and for a moment, I saw the woman I used to love. But that woman was gone. "I loved you," I said quietly. "I would have done anything for you, and you took that love and twisted it into something ugly." Her lips quivered. "I still love you?" I stood up, shaking my head. "No, you don't. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done what you did. You loved what I gave you. You loved the security, the stability, but you never loved me." She broke down completely, collapsing onto the chair. But I didn't stay to watch. As I walked out the front door, I felt the weight of everything lift off my shoulders. The house, the marriage, the lies. It was all behind me now. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. Emily, she could deal with the mess she'd made. A few weeks later, I got a text from Megan. "Megan, you good?" I replied simply, "Better than ever." Her response made me smile. Megan? She deserved everything she got. She did. And honestly, I didn't need revenge anymore. I had my freedom. The unfaithful wife got what she deserved. Karma did its job. And now it was time for me to start over. Without her. Without lies. Without the weight of betrayal. The story was over. And I was finally free.